So welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn. We're so glad that you are able to join us. Today's Lunch and Learn is action steps towards racial justice. Adrienne Lawson is going to be speaking to us today, and she is the Senior Director for Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion here at UC Davis Health. Welcome, Adrienne. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. It's good to see some of you all smiling faces, and I see some familiar faces and names on the screen here. Thank you for joining us today. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen and get started. So we have time for questions and answers at the end. All righty, so let's just start off with a quote. I love quotes. You will see quotes throughout this presentation today. Once again, my name is Adrienne Lawson. I serve as the Senior Director for Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in our Office for Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at UC Davis Health here in Sacramento, California. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And that's a famous quote by James Baldwin, and I'll have more quotes throughout the presentation today. Today, our learning objectives is what you already know. It was on the flyer. We will learn some action steps that we all can take to support racial justice, both in our workplace and our community. And that coincides actually with what we're doing here at UC Davis to promote racial justice and how you can get involved. So just a couple of acronyms. I don't want to assume people know what DEI is. It stands for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and then DNI, Diversity and Inclusion. I will use that throughout the presentation today. And then I would like to give a definition of a term that we're using today, and I decided to just use one, racial justice, which this is what our focus is of today. Well, racial justice seeks to identify racial inequities and address these inequities by developing policies and practices that promote the inclusion and engagement of all individuals. Racial justice includes the work to dismantle systemic racism and oppression, but it emphasizes the establishment and maintenance of deliberate and strategic systems and structures that achieve and sustain equality through proactive and preventive measures. And you see the source there is from the Racial Justice Institute, and you may want to make a note of that and go to that later. There's a lot of good information on that website. Another famous quote, the great solution to all human problems is individual inner transformation. And that's the first thing I would like to focus on today is individual inner transformation to reach racial justice. And this famous quote is by Vernon Howard. So self-awareness. Self-awareness is a mechanism to change one's life. And just make a note of the website down below there from UC Berkeley. Self-awareness requires self-examination. And I don't know if any of you have taken any steps to self-reflect or take self-awareness assessments. And if you have, please put it in the chat that you've used this mechanism. If you haven't, here's an opportunity with UC Berkeley. They have established a well-being quiz to become more familiar with your strengths as well as your weaknesses regarding your well-being. Being aware, though, that's honest, you have to be honest, non-judgmental of yourself, because sometimes we tend to criticize ourselves for our failings, or we may fantasize about how great we are, when neither is actually the case, right? We all have a unique mix of good and bad traits, but we are largely unaware of them. When I used to teach the implicit bias training, I used to talk a lot about self-reflection and self-awareness, because Implicit bias, unconscious bias are things outside of our conscious awareness. And it's the same thing here. So we want to be able to self-reflect and have self-awareness. And in order to self-reflect objectively, we need to quiet our minds, open our hearts, forgive ourselves for our imperfections, and offer kudos, but only when we deserve them. There are many books about developing self-awareness. And if anybody have any recommendations of books on self-awareness, could you please share that in the chat? Next, we're going to talk about you. So when you think about self-awareness, we think about what skills we have, what are our personality, what is our knowledge and our interests, and most importantly, what are our values? So who are you really? If we want to take steps towards social justice and make a difference in the world, at our place of business, in our schools, in our community, and in our homes, it all begins with you, us as individuals, and then as a collective, but it really begins with you. And every success story is a tale of constant adaptation, revision, and change. Sometimes change can be hard and sometimes not. It depends on how flexible, and our mindset has a lot to do with how we accept change and if we want to change. But we have to have a willingness and a desire to change and improve. So, who am I? Who are you? Just think about that. Who are you really? Increasing self-awareness of false attitudes or inappropriate behaviors requires peace of mind, time, attention, and focus. This is a great time that we have now during the pandemic to self-reflect, knowing ahead of time that we can indeed change in positive ways through deeper self-awareness. And it makes it worth working on those personality qualities that we most value. But first, we must look within ourselves through self-examination to see what's there, which is often less obvious than we think. So now I'm going to go to a video that I would like to share with you all. As we reflect on what's really going on in our world today, how does that make you feel? If you can just share in the chat one word of how does it make you feel of what's going on today? Just reflect. We don't learn from our experiences. We learn from reflecting on the experience. And as I reflect on my own personal experience in the world that we live in today, I think about when I was 7 years old, being raised in Los Angeles, California, and witnessing the inequities in my community. I didn't desire to be a doctor or a fireman or a teacher or a nurse. I just wanted to make a difference. I wanted people to have different experiences. I wanted equity. And as you think about your own experiences, and when you were a little kid, when you were a child thinking about what you wanted in life, what you want to be in life, is that what you're doing today? As we self-reflect, we do have to have the ability to understand. We can have all the information that we want, all the knowledge, all the wisdom, but if you don't have understanding, how can we really make a difference? To think and talk about yourself as a person, to be authentic, to share, to be vulnerable, and to be a learner as well. These are some of the first steps toward racial justice, is to be honest with yourself and to share that with others. That's the beginning of making a difference. Our first step to racial justice is personal development. It's a conscious choice to improve one's life, to become a better person, and to grow as an individual. I started my own introspection work when I attended the Unconscious Bias Learning Lab by Cook Ross. Some of you may be familiar with Cook Ross. And the first thing that I had to do with the class is to take the implicit association test. I went back to my hotel room and I took the IAT. And it was a rude awakening for me of the results of this test. And it made me angry and it made me sad. And I felt, I'm a good person. This is not right. There must be some trick to this test. I don't believe it. I started to look up who the researchers were, and I didn't think they were that smart. They were trying to trick me. And I really had to self-reflect and come to realize that it is what it is. And I had to accept that and then do something about it. And it really took a lot of humility. So here are some resources for you all, because you're here today, because you're interested in what can you do as an individual, what can we do collectively, and take action steps toward racial justice. And it begins with ourselves. It starts with us first. We can make a lot of changes. So number 2 here on the list is to read Cultural Humility. There's several different ones, but I recommend Jan Mary Garcia's book. Also other trainings, Making the Unconscious Conscious, Understanding and Mitigating Bias, the Microaggressions training, which is a prerequisite to take the UCLP implicit bias training. Also the SEED, if there's any faculty on the line, which I understand there are faculty who are tuning in today, the SEED curriculum through Faculty Development and Diversity is an excellent resource and starting point in doing the work within. How you can get involved at work is joining employee resource groups. I really admonish you all to check out the employee resource groups, especially those that are not in your own affinity. Join a group unlike yourself. There's several different groups. I'll just name a few I can think of off the top of my head. You have the African American Faculty and Staff Association, the Asian American Faculty and Staff Association, the Latino Faculty and Staff Association, as well as the Diverse Abilities Group, the Pride Group. There's also a Women's Advisory Group, a Veterans Group. Join a group that you don't know much about. Join the group. You don't have to be Latino to join the Latinx group. You don't have to be African American to join that group. I'm part of three of those groups. Join the Campus Book Project. This is another way to really be a learner. I know we are all, we want to do something. First, we have to educate ourselves. We have to self-reflect and know what our biases are. Know who we are. Know what our value, re-examine our values, and then be a learner. Join Growing as a Community webinar series through my office. There's the website there. That's the way you can get involved to be a learner. Join the DEI listserv. You can contact our department to be put on our listserv to receive a lot of different resources. We also send out different opportunities that's in our community. Sign up for the DEI newsletter so you know what's going on to stay informed. Also, we have the D&I Dialogue series, which a lot of you have attended in the past, and they have started back up. These are ways you can learn and grow as an individual and then as a community, as a collective. And how can you make a difference at work? Create a diversity task force in your department or with your program. Also, review your department website. Is it diverse? Is it inclusive? Assess your recruitment of new employees and students. Is it diverse and inclusive? Look at your team. What does your team look like? Is your team diverse? And is your team inclusive? Does everyone have a voice on your team? Encourage living the principles of community. Create community agreements for living the principles of community in your office. Something that you can talk about in your team meeting. Reaffirm the principles of community annually. And of course, participate in the annual principles of community events. But in your own department, this is something that you all can do. If you're a manager or a supervisor, this is something you all can talk about in your team meeting. Be a resource. Share DEI resources and trainings with your colleagues across the campus. Encourage your department to attend trainings. Give release time. That's something that we always hear in employee resource groups, is that staff are not given the time to attend different D&I trainings or resources or events or things that they can learn to be a better person, to be more inclusive, to be an ally. Allow that release time. And you go take your team with you. If you're the team lead or the supervisor or manager, say, hey, let's all go to this event or to this training, and then come back to your office and debrief about it, talk about it. Speak up when you see racist actions or hear racist comments. Say something. Implement random acts of kindness throughout the year. Encourage kudos as an agenda item for each team meeting. I see there's a couple of my team members on the call today, and that's something that we do at every team meeting. At the beginning of our meeting, we give kudos. People want to know that they're valued and appreciated. Also, request DEI training for your department or your program. The email is diversitytraining@ucdavis.edu. Also, get involved in your community. Attend city council meetings. They're online now. You can go and see what's on the ballot, see what's going on in your neighborhood. Get involved. There's plenty of ways to donate food, clothing, electronic devices, and monetary gifts to your local community centers or your schools, especially the schools. They're in dire need of many things at this time. Join your neighborhood association or local school board. And please don't forget to vote. Pay attention to Senate bills. There's several different bills on the ballot that we should really be informed on. and don't wait till the last minute to know what you're voting on. Volunteer to be a mentor, a sponsor, or a tutor in underserved areas, which is lacking. Give monetarily to nonprofit organizations that are focused on racial justice. Get involved with Hands On Sacramento, which is a volunteer organization. If you don't know where to start, go there. There's plenty of things that you can do in your community to make a difference. Support minority-owned businesses, organizations, and colleges. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. It begins with us. Thank you. We can open it up for questions and answers now.
Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question you would like to pose, and also feel free to use the chat if that works better for you.
Thank you for all the feedback in the chat. Would you all like to have a dialogue or have any comments you'd like to make? I intentionally kept it 30 minutes to engage in a dialogue. So, or anything you guys feel. Janelle, are you good?
Yeah, so I just wanted to leave some time to just let people have the opportunity to unmute themselves. I know sometimes it's a little difficult. Feel free to ask the questions, but I don't mind going first. I found it really interesting when you suggested that we join a group that stands for a group of people that is different than ourselves. That really resonated with me. When there are different groups to kind of choose from and decide what to join, I always look for something that kind of fits into my box. Whether it be about women or, I look for something like that. And if I hear that it's a group that is like a Latino group, I do have a girlfriend who teaches for our classes, Lena Ibarra, and she is part of the Latino group. And often I share their activities and I just love what they're doing. But I never would have considered to actually join it because I feel like maybe I don't fit in or that group's not for me. And I can really see how by joining their group, I could really look at what's important to them and learn more about them. So that was really something that I took away from this, is just being more willing to maybe do the uncomfortable thing and join a group that maybe doesn't all look like me or have kind of the same ideals or values, just so I could learn and grow. I think that was a really great one for me to take away.
I'll go ahead and speak as not one of the presenters speaking. Janelle, I have to second that because I know for myself, I'm reflecting back to high school, right? When I recall a lot of those types that we had the BSU and the ASU and the Metro Club, and it was very much you didn't join if you weren't part of that group. And I think my reluctance now would have been that I don't want to be perceived as joining something in a way that, it came up in a meeting we had recently where it felt like all the people who I'm going to say were white were trying to come up with solutions for the problem with police violence and the Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, guys, it's a problem that we all are dealing with, but maybe we don't have the solutions. Maybe we need to listen more to find out what this. So I guess my fear is being perceived as coming in to fix something when maybe my job is really to stand back and go, I need to learn something here. So that would have been my personal reluctance, but I appreciate hearing that it's a good thing to do, and maybe I'll give it a shot.
This is Carolyn. I just want to say thank you to both Janelle and Sherry for sharing that. I actually serve as chair of the Diversibility Employee Resource Group at UC Davis Health. And we say diversibility because we like to focus on the various abilities. Like, it's not just people with disabilities, we have allies as well. And, I can relate that there are things that I maybe would feel like an outsider because I can't necessarily completely relate. But I think the important thing is the whole point of diversity, equity, inclusion is to understand one another and to try to be empathetic and put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, and that helps us learn and grow and evolve. And so as a member of the diversibility cohort, I encourage anybody, whether you have a disability or not, to join. And I know that a lot of the other employee resource groups feel the same, because it's just about learning and growing, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And I hear what you're saying, Sherry, about coming in as not a person of color, about solutions. It's not really about that. It's, there's, people are really accepting if you are interested in joining another group. People want you to come and join their group. And it's not about coming up with a solution, but it's just figuring out what's their mission. You might want to look at some of the websites to find out what are their mission, what are they doing. It's really just getting involved. And that's how you learn about people who are not like you. It's just getting involved and just caring. I'm thinking about Marvin Gaye, I'm just still kind of on that, what do we really need in the world? What do we not talk about? We never talk about love. There's just so much hate in the world that we don't even say the word, and so it's all about caring about people. And I do want to address, there was something in the chat about, what if you hear a racist remark? How do you, what do you do? What do you say? Well, if anybody has any other suggestions, please put it in the chat. And I know we don't want to offend people. It could be, a supervisor or whatsoever. But I say to still speak up. I say to still speak up. You can do it in a respectful way. You don't have to embarrass anyone. If it's in a group or maybe a staff meeting, after the staff meeting, you can knock on the door. Hey, I just wanted to bring to your attention of what happened in the staff meeting, and I feel really uncomfortable about it, something that you said. And take it from there. You're not attacking the person. Even if you have to wait the next day and think about, how can you approach, the person, and because if you don't say anything, it's almost a ticket to do it again. Being brave, being courageous, it's a risk. It's a risk. I mean, just imagine, just in the marches, the civil rights movement, people actually lost their lives for other people to be free. It is a risk. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not. Do I think you'll lose your job? No, I don't think you'll lose your job. I don't think they'll fire you for speaking up. I think you'll be respected. And I think the first time you speak up, it becomes easier and easier. You become more brave, you become stronger the more you speak up. But there's several quotes you all can look up. Just Google these quotes about not speaking up. It's as if you're proving that it's okay. So it's more deadly not to speak up than to speak up. It does take courage. To do this work, to do social justice work, it is a risk. Even though I work in the diversity office, it's still a risk. People don't like you, you get backlash, we get, emails that are not so nice, but anything worth having, it takes courage. Does that make sense? It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's going to be easy. It won't be.
Yes, thank you. That made total sense. I see that a lot of people agree that that makes sense. I think a lot of the things that are the most important in life are the hardest things to do.
If we really want to make a difference, we have to stand up for what's right. Otherwise, like I said, it begins with us. At the end of the day, it starts with the individual. We can make so many changes just ourselves, especially if you're a manager or supervisor. You can make a lot of changes in your department. The climate and the culture is contingent upon you and how you operate. And one person, even if they're not a manager or supervisor, can make the difference in the whole office, in the whole unit. One person on how you treat people.
I like how as much emphasis is being put on learning within as much as learning about others, because I've come to realize that no matter how, how good I am about being open and aware, there's always more to learn and there's always more you can change. Even just the littlest, terms that are used, things that are thought and said and done. If I can make changes within myself, hopefully that will help enact change in others.
I think I read something in the chat about you don't know if it's a racist remark, or you don't know if you're, sometimes I'm not sure if certain comments are offensive or not. If I'm not offended, others might not be. I'm also concerned with being a Karen by saying something others might not think I shouldn't. Well, I can respond this way to that comment. Just being mindful, paying attention to your colleagues, and your body language tells a lot. If someone seems uncomfortable, you can ask, hey, did I say something that offended? I even do that. We can all offend unintentionally. If you see body language or someone stop talking or the engagement stops, you can ask, hey, did I say anything to offend you? Or even in a staff meeting, maybe someone said something and you notice someone's body language changed or they became quiet, ask the person. If, something happened, did I say anything? But don't get offended if they say yes. Don't get defensive, really think about, what you did, and apologize. Hey, I didn't mean to offend you.
We have one more question I think we have time for. We just have a couple minutes left. In our chat, we had a question that says, how best to deal with family and friends who say all lives matter? They just don't get it. It proves to be troublesome in relationships.
Yeah, that's true. And I believe that all lives matter, as well as blue lives matter. All that's true. But that may not be what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obvious that there's a greater issue. Of course, we care about everyone's lives, but why are these lives taken more frequently? So we have to deal with the issue. So a lot of that is really trying to avoid the issue. That's what that is. And so it's like, agree with them. Great, I agree totally. I totally agree with you. But the issue is this. Can we talk about why are Black men and women being killed on the street for nothing, for just being Black? Why is that? Can we have a dialogue about that? So agree with them, because I agree with that. But let's talk about this. Why is this happening, and what can we do to make a difference? So just, you have to hold people accountable. That's just a smoke screen to avoid the issue.
I
So
think
don't.
it's also a learning lesson. Some people don't realize there's a bigger issue, and it's really up to whether they want to have a conversation or just kind of be a right fighter. But I think that it's just kind of gives us a clue that they don't really understand the depth of the conversation that we're having. When we say all lives matter, it's a very kind of flat and on the surface. Of course, all lives matter, but when we really get into the difference, I can be walking down the street with my grandson and people not understand that we're related, and they have something to say or warn me about the person who might look like they're following me when actually we're related, and it's the most loving, wonderful person in the world that I love the most. And some people just don't understand the depth of what he has to experience walking around with his white grandmother, and the way that he would feel or the way that he would be treated. And it's just so much deeper, and some people just don't understand. And I think sometimes we have to let them and kind of just move to what we can do to make a difference. Because I've noticed in my family, there's a lot of times where there's nothing I can say, and we can fight and fight and go round and round. And I have to know how I believe and stand up for what I think is important.
Good point, Janelle. Yeah, it is a level, I mentioned that in my presentation. Understanding is really the greatest thing. If you don't understand, it doesn't matter what type of degrees you have, your experience. If you don't understand, and then you have to have a willingness to understand, right? To learn. So if you're not open to learn, then it's really difficult. And, that's a lost battle.
It is. I just want to say, if there are people that need to leave because we're a little bit over time, go ahead and do that. I'm just going to, if it's all right, read a couple of the comments that came through. Kay Hermanson was wondering if it's helpful to ask them why the phrase Black Lives Matter is upsetting to them.
That's true. It's all about dialogue, and, with our family, it can be very difficult, because they're our family. But just opening up the conversation and asking questions, you don't have to have all the answers. It's really having a dialogue. And, buy someone a book. Offer an article or a website, or, some people may not be readers, but maybe a video, And so offer resources, be a resource.
We have a question here on the chat. Does the university offer allyship training? Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I do. If you can contact Mercedes Piedra, it's on the Davis campus, and also in our community, there's something for allies through the Feminist Institute, but I think it might be just for faculty, but you could check it out.
And I'm going to go ahead and put her email address in the chat if there's anybody that wanted to go ahead and get a hold of Mercedes.
But thank you for being here, and I appreciate all of you for being lifelong learners. It is really about, learning and, getting involved with other groups unlike you, make a friend that's not like you. Think about your circle, and go to coffee, and before you know it, I know we are sheltering in place, but you can still have coffee, I think, if the fires don't bother you. But anyway, I had a person tell me when all this George Floyd just happened, she sent me an email and she invited me to her house. And she's not African-American. She said she's never had an African-American at her house before. And I said, I'm gonna go. So Anyway, just be open and do something different that you've never done before. And be brave, be courageous. Don't be afraid to make a difference and to speak up.
And also, Adrian, I wanted to mention that that be prepared to feel uncomfortable, maybe, you know, for a while. 35 years ago, when I was at the university, I joined the African American group, which was just starting, and I felt really uncomfortable. But after a while, it was just like, you know, friends didn't even notice anything. So you kind of have to expect maybe a little bit of discomfort.
Thank you so much for saying that. Exactly.
Could I add to that?
Sure, John.
I was just going to say something like to the same effect of the person that just spoke before me. Several years ago, I was in Georgia with my then partner, now my ex-partner, who is African American, and we were visiting his family. They said they were going to have a small party, so we went, and it was not a small party. There was about 150 people there, and I was the only white person. And nobody was mean to me. Nobody was unkind or did anything to make me feel uncomfortable, but I was extremely uncomfortable. And my partner at the time came over and grabbed my hand. He goes, "How are you doing?" I said, "I feel really uncomfortable, and I feel stupid about that because no one's done anything to make me feel uncomfortable. I just feel that way." And he goes, "That's how it feels." Mm-hmm. And I was like, I never really thought about what it felt like for him when we were always surrounded by Caucasian people. And he goes, "That's what it feels like. It goes away. You just have to get used to it." So I really like the suggestion of joining groups that or people that don't look like you or don't, you know, aren't the same type of, you know, background, because it is uncomfortable. And the only way to get to be not uncomfortable is to put yourself in that position until you're not uncomfortable anymore. Yeah. And then maybe you can help make a change.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, John. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've gotten comfortable. Thanks, John. I appreciate that. Anyone else?
Dr. Larson, may say something really quick.
Sure.
This is Nicole Staines. I'm in the Department of Public Health Sciences, and we just recently started, you know, after the killing of George Floyd, I had seen it on TV. No one should see any person dying on TV. It's horrific, but the fact that that still, so, you know, I just can't believe that we haven't come farther along, you know, and so I started talking to some people because I never really addressed it. You know, I'm Caucasian, white, never realized that I grew up in predominantly white. But the thing is when I was talking about it, one of my colleagues said, it's not about you, right? It's not really about your experiences. It's really about these experiences. And that's the reason why I asked the question about the allyship, because, you know, it kind of takes you through the training of understanding that it's not about me. It's about understanding and having that empathy for, excuse me, what others have gone through. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I realized that for me, it was difficult to talk about. And then I thought, I don't like that. You know, as a CAO, as a leader at UC Davis, I was very disappointed and uncomfortable that, you know, I wasn't more involved and hadn't taken the time to educate myself on racism and social injustices and all of that. And so for me, the book, Me and White Supremacy, has been, it's a 28-day, and you have to do the work. And it's really hard. It's not meant to make me feel better. It's made to make me look in the mirror and really ask those hard and difficult questions about myself. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. And sometimes we try to say, oh, you know, have a diversity, equity, inclusion goal. And we go with it because the university is asking, but I want to take it a step farther than that. You know, like, what else can we actually be doing? How can we be engaged? How can we educate ourselves and move forward and start having these difficult conversations, right? Because we do. John is exactly right. We need to keep talking about it to where it's not a comfortable thing to be discussing. And I know they have a lot for faculty and a lot of other things. So we were talking about in our department possibly having, and I'm just sharing with the group, a diversity ambassador. You know, we have a wellness ambassador in our department, but we thought it would be great to have a diversity ambassador so we can start having those conversations, especially with our leaders in the department, managers and supervisors. And that's a start. And then how can we engage in the community? How can we have those partnerships? And what else can we do, especially as public health sciences department? I feel like we could do more, not just within the institution, but in the community as well. So it's been very empowering. You know, I'm not telling you that the work was easy, because it's not. And it really starts with even my family and friends and having those conversations when I feel that they make inappropriate or unacceptable statements. And it's like, so it's just kind of opening up the conversation with them of why do they feel that way? You know, and have you tried to read this book, or have you watched this documentary, or have you, you know, and it's just trying to approach it that way, which, you know, and it's difficult. I mean, my father passed away a couple of years ago, but he would disown you if you talked to another person of color, you know. I mean, it was just, right. So the struggle's out there. With some people, it's been so ingrained in them for years and years and years, but it's going to keep that. If we don't start having these conversations and we don't start taking action, it's just going to continue to be here and exist, right? And so it is stepping past our fears, and stepping up for something that we believe in, and taking action. And it starts with educating, and it starts by looking at yourself, right? So anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. You're exactly right. And I appreciate you being vulnerable and just sharing. That's what it's all about, just being real, you know, just putting it out there. You know, my family is a racist, and I hate it, you know. It's really sharing and being vulnerable and getting into those conversations and, you know, well, why was this? You know, just really having those conversations. I appreciate you, Nicole, having the bravery to even, you know, talk about it. So thank you. That's it. That's it. That is it. Just really being honest.
Yes. Well, because I choose love, and you're right. We need to be talking about that more often. It's so hard. We are surrounded by negativity, the news, the world, and sometimes I feel like it's there to kind of break us down, right? So we're not doing the work to make the changes necessary. So, you know, that's the thing. There's things that happen around us that we can't control, but we can control how we react to them, and to be a positive force and to be proactive and really and to love. You know, it's with anything that you have to work hard at, you know, that's worth anything. So is being positive, so is self-love, so is self-care. And when you can truly take care of yourself like that, then you can love and be there for everyone else too. And, you know, but it's worth it. It's really worth it. And with positive saying, you know, you focus, it's like brushing your teeth. If we keep being positive, if we keep doing it, you know, it'll just be part of our everyday life.
Exactly. Yeah. And once we start the conversation and continue it, it does become easier and people feel more comfortable. But we do have to speak up. Thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your story. Powerful. And thank you, Janelle, for inviting me, and for everyone on the call. And, you know, I appreciate everyone. I just really do. I appreciate everyone.